All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Virginia BEAD Challenge webinar this morning. You will hear from the team at DHCD as well as our partners with Virginia Tech Center for Geospatial Information Technology, as well as our partners with Ready.net this morning. And so, again, welcome to the webinar. As Chandler said earlier, just housekeeping rules. The webinar will be recorded and posted on our website. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, make sure you put them in the chat. The team will also give you all an opportunity to ask questions at the end of today's presentation, as well as those friends that are on the phone. You all will be able to unmute at that point and also ask any questions. And with that, I'm going to turn today's webinar over to our team. Thank you, Chandler.
Good to be with everybody. I'm Chandler Vaughn. I work as a senior policy analyst in the broadband office. Just want to give opening remarks, outline where we're at in the BEAD process, talk about where we are in Volume 1 approval, which impacts the start of this challenge process, and go from there. We've got a lot of exciting content and presentations, demonstrations for folks today. Just to underline the importance of this process, I mean, the BEAD challenge process, as folks know that have been following along with BEAD program development, is different from the VADI program. The challenge process under BEAD is at the start. So we develop what the universe of eligible, unserved, and underserved locations is for the BEAD program. And this challenge process is our one chance to get that right. So what we've been doing over the last 6 months as a broadband office is standing up a challenge portal, resident database, and dashboard to make sure that we're picking up as best we can, as most accurately as we can, all unserved and underserved locations by the BEAD definition that aren't in an existing funded project for broadband deployment. So excited to share that process with you today and how we can make sure we identify those locations. Wanted to kick things off with an update of where we're at in the challenge, or where we're at in the BEAD development process. We've submitted, and we were the first state in the country to submit all 3 required planning documents to NTIA. That's the National Telecommunications Information Association. They are the administrators of the BEAD program. Those 3 planning documents are the 5-year plan, Volume 1 of the initial proposal, which outlines this challenge process, as well as Volume 2 of the initial proposal that was submitted most recently, outlines how we're going to run our subgrantee selection process. Haven't received feedback on that yet, but excited to share that out when it does happen. The topic of today's discussion is the challenge process. This is really the first point where the rubber hits the road in the BEAD program, where we'll be running this process, determining the eligible universe of locations under BEAD. That's followed by the application process for broadband providers to develop proposals to serve those unserved locations. As noting back to Volume 1 approval timeline, we have not received the official sign-off from NTIA at this point on Volume 1. We have received staff-level approval from NTIA for the challenge process incorporated into Volume 1 of the BEAD initial proposal. It has not yet been signed by Assistant Secretary Alan Davidson. We're waiting on that at this point. This challenge process, it won't start today, but it will start 7 days after Alan Davidson signs our Volume 1 BEAD initial proposal. We will make sure everybody on this call, on our constant contact database that receives our emails, knows well in advance when Alan Davidson signs that document of Volume 1, approves the challenge process, and we'll get started per NTIA's requirement 7 days after Alan Davidson's signature is on Volume 1. So want to make that clear. A lot of the times our how to apply or how to webinar signify the start of the process. This is a delayed start. This how to apply webinar today is to get folks geared up for that process, for pre-registrations, understanding the challenge portal, understanding the resident dashboard. But it will be a delayed start. We'll let folks know when that official start date is. That start date will kick off a 30-day challenge window, 30 calendar days for nonprofits, broadband providers, and local governments to submit initial challenges. After that challenge is submit, it's on a rolling basis, but each individual challenge after it's submitted, after that, for broadband providers have 30 business days to submit a rebuttal for that challenge. After that happens, we've got 30 calendar days to decide whether or not that's a valid challenge or not. It's a rolling calendar of that. So at the time that each party is notified along that chain, that's when the clock starts for each individual challenge, not how we've done it in Body in the past of having a challenge window and then a rebuttal window that is not on a rolling basis. And before I turn it over to Aaron to talk about challenge types and more nitty-gritty details of this process, I wanted to highlight some of the specific differences in between the BEAD challenge process and what a lot of us might be used to in the VADI challenge process for state general funds. We've already covered a lot of these, but most specifically, the BEAD challenge process occurs before the application period takes place. This challenge process we're expecting will start in late October and run through nearly the end of January into 2024. BEAD challenges can be submitted by local governments, nonprofits, and broadband providers. Y'all are familiar that in the past, usually an application area may be challenged by a broadband provider to let the applicant and DHCD know that service already exists in that area. But another unique part about BEAD, the BEAD challenge process, is that these parties, these three eligible challengers, can challenge in either direction. So we've got a list of 162,000 unserved and underserved locations. Challenges can be submitted to say, hey, DHCD, these locations are actually already served. We are used to experiencing in Body. They could also be submitted to say, hey, DHCD, these locations are actually, in fact, unserved and should be BEAD eligible when you don't already have them on your list. So wanted to highlight that. Also, an important part of this process is identifying community anchor institutions. The BEAD program classifies a community anchor institution as unserved if it doesn't have gigabit symmetrical broadband access. So those will be incorporated into the application process after this challenge window closes. Would encourage folks, especially nonprofits that are online, get with your networks of community anchor institutions, locations of your nonprofits, local governments, make sure that your offices that provide some kind of digital connectivity service are on this community anchor institution list. Don't want this to be forgotten in the larger push to make sure we have the right locations that are unserved eligible for BEAD. Please check out that community anchor institution list as well. We're waiting for it to be posted on the Open Data Portal. Waiting for the Open Data Portal staff outside of the Office of Broadband to press upload for all the information we've submitted to them for community anchor institutions, and we're pushing to keep that process moving, but it will be available before we start this challenge process. And with that, the last bullet there is more so going into what Aaron's going to talk about next with eligible challenge types. So Aaron, I'll turn it over to you if you can still see the screen.
Yep, I got it. Good morning, everybody. Aaron Barnes, broadband planner here in the Office of Broadband. So I'll be briefly talking about the different types of challenges that can be submitted in the challenge portal. I think there's 11 total challenges that we have. And the reason you see those first 5 highlighted is because that's what we anticipate receiving the most challenges. I'm sure we'll get other challenges, but those are just our top 5 as we kind of look at the landscape of what we know so far. And just for your reference, initial proposal volume 1, pages 11 through 13, has all the detailed information for each one of these challenges if you want to check that out. Next slide, please. All right, so obviously, type A availability challenges, we think we'll receive a good amount of these. I'm going to read some of what's on here, not everything, but I just want to get that information out there and be very clear about what's accepted and what isn't. So the description of the broadband service identified as not offered at location, including a unit of multiple dwelling MDU. So just 2 examples of that: screenshot of the provider webpage, or a service request being refused within the last 180 days. So on the permissible rebuttal side, provider could show that the location subscribes or has subscribed within the last 12 months. So that could look like a copy of a customer bill. Also, if the evidence was a screenshot and believed to be an error screenshot that shows service availability. Next slide, please. And speed. We definitely anticipate getting these also. So the official description, the actual speed of the service tier falls below the unserved, the underserved thresholds. So specific examples, speed test by subscriber, and those they'll go into the CJIT, and Reddy will go into kind of the speed test requirements later on in the presentation. That'll be showing the insufficient speed and meeting the requirements for speed tests. For permissible rebuttals, we have provider has countervailing speed tests, evidence showing sufficient speed, for example, from their own network management system. And with that, I will pass it to my colleague, Lonnie Hamilton.
Hi, everyone. Lonnie Hamilton, the other broadband planner in the office. The next challenge type we're going to cover is planned service. This is distinct from a commitment. It can include a commitment, but that would just be if it's for a program that doesn't require build out to the 120 BEAD definition of broadband. But you'd have to have evidence that a provider is planning a build that'll be complete by June 30, 2024. And if you want to rebut that is being built, you would need to provide some evidence that that build out isn't really happening anymore, whether it was canceled or the build out won't meet the BEAD requirements. The next challenge type would be an enforceable commitment. This would be some kind of commitment made either by a broadband provider to a locality or some kind of federal or state program that says, hey, we're building out to this location. And you could only rebut that if they knew that they were going to default on that for one reason or another. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Lonnie. Just also want to add too on the planned service challenge. This isn't on the slide, but if a planned service challenge does come in from a broadband provider, our volume 1 does state that we will require that broadband provider to enter into an MOU with DHCD, so that commitment is enforced. That area is actually built out by June 30th, 2024. So also wanted to flag that for folks online.
Chandler? Finally, the community anchor institution challenge is just if the location should be a CAI, and you can rebut that if you think that it doesn't meet the definition or the CAI no longer exists or operates. We have 4 important files for this challenge process. Most of them are up on the open data portal. There's the unserved BEAD eligible locations. These are only published as Fabric ID numbers due to limitations on what we are allowed to publish with that data. There's also the underserved BEAD eligible locations that are also just Fabric IDs. We also have the unserved community anchor institutions, which is also Fabric ID numbers only, but we also are working on getting the full community anchor institution layer up, and that would be addresses without Fabric ID numbers. Although if you have access to Fabric, you can link Fabric IDs to addresses and lat longs and any other information you might need. You need to get a Fabric license from CostQuest. That would be Tier D if you're a broadband provider, and a Tier E license for local governments and nonprofits. I believe these are being rolled out now. And you need to use Fabric version 2 very specifically if you're going to participate in the BEAD challenge process. There's also a version 1, version 3 that is a less and more updated version of the Fabric, but those have different Fabric IDs, and therefore you wouldn't be able to match into anything we're using.
Hey, Chandler.
From there, over to Brandon.
Hey, Chandler, I just wanted to add something real quick. For the open data portal specifically, once you go into the open data portal, if you've never been in there before, you'll see detailed descriptions of what Lonnie just talked about as far as the licensing issues. So if you pull up the open data portal, you'll see that information as you're trying to download the file. So it's pretty self-explanatory in there. I know it's a lot of information, but we have it all that you can read through.
Thanks for that, Aaron. And yeah, we'll turn it over to Brandon now with the Center for Geospatial Information Technology at Virginia Tech.
Hey, thanks, Chandler. Good morning, everybody. I'm Brandon Herndon, the director for the Center for Geospatial Information Technology at Virginia Tech. We developed the challenge portal for DHCD Office of Broadband, and we also have developed Commonwealth Connection, the statewide broadband map. Yeah, so I'll go through the just a quick overview of the challenge process, how it currently exists. Chandler went over some of these dates and timelines. It is a rolling timeline. Eligible locations are published. Here's links to the open data portal for the unserved and underserved locations. The challenge portal is open now for account creation, but is not open to submit challenges until the 7 days after Alan Davidson signs the permission. So that is to be determined. The challenge portal will only be open for 30 calendar days after it opens. There will be no additional openings later or extensions like we've done in the past for the covered submission portal that we did the past few years. So 30 calendar days is a hard date. This is based on the initial BEAD proposal, volume 1 that DHCD created. So it's open for 30 days. Service providers have 30 business days to rebut verified challenges. And providers will receive an email notification when a challenge has been, when they've been identified in a challenge. So you don't have to go on to the portal and keep checking every day. We do have default emails for all broadband service providers. However, we encourage you to go on the challenge portal and create an account, and with emails that you may want it to flow to. You can have more than one email associated with a broadband service provider, and all emails associated with a broadband service provider will be notified when challenges are created. So after a challenge is created, the BSP will have 30 days to rebut it. And then after it's rebutted, DHCD will have 30 calendar days to review the rebuttal to either approve or deny the rebuttal. So here's the process overview. So a challenge is created. When a challenge is created, we do an automatic check to make sure that the location ID is valid. If the location ID is not valid, it's just rejected and the challenge doesn't go anywhere after that. So after it goes through our automatic checks for location, then we do a minimum level of evidence review by DHCD, and that determines whether it's a valid challenge or not. After the MLE is completed and it's determined that it's a valid challenge, then the broadband service provider is notified of the challenge. At this point, after the MLE is finished, that is when the 30 business day timer for the broadband service provider starts. And the broadband service provider, since it's a rolling timer, it'll be different for each challenge, and that'll be able to be seen. The due date for response of the rebuttal will be able to be seen by each challenge for the broadband service provider. At this time, the broadband service provider can either choose to accept the challenge with no contest. At that point, it's automatically resolved. Or they can rebut the challenge. If they rebut the challenge, DHCD has 30 calendar days to review the rebuttals. If the rebuttal is accepted, then the challenge is denied. And if the rebuttal is denied, then the challenge is confirmed. And that is the flow. This is also on the portal here in the About page. And I'll go ahead and put in the chat so you guys can be looking at it while we're here. Put the link to the portal in the chat page. Okay. So in order to submit a challenge, you have to be what NTIA defines as an eligible entity. And definitions are here. For eligible entities that are not broadband service providers, there's a field to enter your federal employer identification number, I think is FEIN, your tax ID. So that is suggested you put that in there for faster account approval. Just because you register an account doesn't mean it'll be approved. DHCD will review all accounts before you can submit challenges. So when you go in to register your account, you will not be able to submit a challenge right away. you have to wait until your account is approved, and then you'll receive an email notification that your account is approved to submit challenges. And then again, we won't open the portal for challenges until we have NTIA approval. That's to be determined sometime later. Yeah, so after you register as an eligible entity, how to submit a challenge. So step-by-step instructions are located in several places on our portal. And you can do either, so we'll go to, so if you go in here and you register, this is what you'll see to create your account. And then after you submit this, this is when you'll be taken to a screen that says, your account is under review. And you'll receive an email once your account's verified. Once you're able to log in, you can go to the challenge and create a challenge. And this is what the challenge creation screen looks like. Here's also links to the unserved and underserved BEAD eligible location ID lists, as well as the initial proposal and a link to the ready.net speed test. So you can do either a single challenge for a single address, or you can do a bulk challenge. And for a bulk challenge, you have the option to upload a CSV, and we also have a template here and CSV instructions. A challenge will consist of several things. We suggest you use location IDs if at all possible instead of street addresses. Street addresses may or may not be resolved to an appropriate location ID. If we receive a good location ID, then there's no question about where it is. If you're not sure how to find a location ID, we have some instructions here on using the FCC's map on how you can find your location ID for a particular address. And then also you have the ability here to add supporting documents such as speed tests. Unfortunately, the NTIA requires 3 speed tests for a speed test challenge taken on 3 different days. So screenshots or information for those supporting speed tests can be shown here, as well as comments that will be able to be seen by DHCD and the BSP. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so back up to the bulk challenges. Right now, we're limiting to bulk challenges up to roughly 10,000 locations at a time. This is because they are checked on the fly by our software to make sure that they're valid location IDs or not. And if you start getting too much over 8 or 10,000, the wait time to upload your file gets kind of cumbersome, over 2 minutes or so. So we thought 10,000 would be a good cutoff for that. If you have very large files that you want to submit, please feel to reach out to us directly, and we can work with you on ingesting that information data directly. Yeah, the submitted challenges, the status of them can be seen at any time in a public view at connectingvirginia.com. That's the site hosted by ready.net, and they will host a view of the statewide view of the status of current challenges, and that's a public view. If you submit a challenge yourself, you can see challenges here, create a new challenge, or see challenges created. So if you're an eligible entity and have submitted an eligible entity and have submitted challenges, here's where you can see a status of just the ones that you've submitted. The map that Ready is hosting has just the public view, so it gives everyone an overall picture. That'll be updated weekly, probably on early in the week, Monday or Tuesday for the week prior. So I do want to go into a little more detail on how a challenge is broken out, because the challenge can consist of one location or many locations, depending on if it's a single location challenge or a bulk challenge. Here's 2 examples of bulk challenges. So we can look at the details on this one and see, and this is, don't pay attention to this. This is just an instance that's not live. This is just dummy data for the presentation. But so you can see your challenges here. So this is one challenge. It shows the date that the challenge is submitted, the provider that was identified in the challenge, the number of locations that the challenge contains, and the current stage of the challenge. And that stage is based on this workflow here. So you can always go back to the workflow to see kind of where the state of your challenge is. At any time, you can copy, export your challenges that you have here. And when you export it, it'll see how this is paginated to separate pages. It'll download everything contained, whether it's 1,000 of them or just 50, into one document if you want it for personal use and reference. Yeah, so it'll have the location ID, the address identified, the type of challenge it is, the tech type, and the status of the challenge. It'll also show files uploaded, and then we don't have it right here yet, but it'll also show comments contained, any comments about the challenge, including responses from the service provider and DHCD will be available to the submitter. Those comments and additional details right here won't be in the overall public view that Ready hosts. Yeah, so now we're at submitting a challenge, and now we'll look at how service providers can submit a rebuttal. So again, step-by-step instructions are located on our About page. So here underneath this workflow is lots of links on frequently asked questions for eligible entities, to include how to respond to how to rebut a challenge for service providers, CSV details, the unserved locations, the initial proposal, and a link to the speed test. So going now to the broadband service providers are going to have a little bit different view of what it looks like when you're rebutting challenges, because there's so if you go to manage challenges for broadband service providers, you'll have this additional window where you can dispute challenges, and that'll bring up a little different view, this because you may have a lot here. So here's challenges, and like I said, so you can have challenges here, but each challenge could contain multiple addresses. So for service providers, this is important, and the details of this are all contained in the frequently asked questions document, but I'm going to go over it a little bit here. So before you can advance a challenge here in the main window and advance it to finalized or rebuttal or some next step, all of the addresses contained within this singular challenge must have the appropriate level of approval as far as confirming the challenge or rebutting the challenge within here. So you can do them in bulk, or you can do one at a time, and you're able to filter challenges here too by different statuses, because this could get cumbersome. So we tried to make it filterable and easy to see challenges by certain statuses, so you can move them along as well. If you go to the challenges view, it's updated. This one's actually already completed, so the deadline is not there, but this deadline will automatically update, and the deadline is for each challenge submitted. So as I said before, it's a rolling calendar of 30 business days for providers to respond. So this deadline will be updated depending on when the minimum level of evidence is determined that it's a valid challenge, and you're notified by DHCD in the automated email. Okay, so going here to total addresses, as I said before, you can see here, some of them are confirmed no contest, and some of them are rejected, and then they were rejected, and these were already adjudicated by DHCD, so the rebuttal was accepted. And some of these the rebuttal was denied. So here's several examples of a provider having, they didn't confirm it, so the challenge is confirmed. And here they rebutted it, but the challenge was rejected. And here they rebutted it, but the rebuttal was denied, so the challenge was still confirmed. So those are kind of the three final statuses that a challenge or that a location challenge can end up in. And this is an example of a bulk challenge submission. Yeah, so that is the provider method to reviewing and rebutting or not contesting challenges that are levied against a provider. And as I said before, they'll be automatically notified after they pass the minimum level of evidence review. Okay, so now what to do now? I would encourage everybody to go on and create an account on the challenge portal. That way we can start getting people's default emails, at least for service providers, switched over to whatever you want them to be, or associated with ones that you want them to be associated with. Also, eligible entities can start creating accounts. That way, this will give DHCD some time to go ahead and educate all of the accounts that are created, and so that when this opens, you can hit the ground running. Encourage you to review step-by-step instructions. Feel free to reach out to us or DHCD if you have questions. You can go ahead, even though the challenge hasn't started yet, you can go ahead and start collecting your speed tests from ready.net, and Ready will go into this in more detail right after my presentation. And then you can go ahead and start collecting any additional submission documents as required by the NTIA to challenge a location. This is via the initial proposal instructions, starting on page 9, goes into detail on this, and you can review our CSV guidelines as well. And then DHCD will reach out when the challenge portal is open and ready to go for challenge submissions. All right, so I'll pass it now to ready.net to go over the challenge process and more detail about the public view.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Brandon, and thanks all. I'm Dustin Loop, the Director of Community Development with ReadyNet, and I'll walk through just how to navigate the kind of public-facing speed test and map view really quick, and happy to answer, hang around for any questions that there might be at the end here. So it's not highlighting my browser, but it looks, I'm hoping I'm sharing the right thing. Are you all seeing the public site here?
Yeah, we've got you, Dustin.
Cool, thank you. So when you navigate to connectingvirginia.com, which is linked from the portal, there are 2 different navigation buttons here. One will take you to the public map here, and it has the locations displayed based on the BEAD eligibility designations of unserved, served, and served, so you can kind of get a high level view of what this what the status is across the state, and you can also filter to kind of look for community anchor institutions, and there's a few filters based on MDUs, like the unit count within a building, and a few other filters down here. But ultimately, this will be where the once Virginia Tech has and the broadband office have reviewed the challenges, and there are status updates, we'll get those updated and they will display on this map. So you'll be able to see, not quite in real time, but we'll update it each week with the current status of the challenges across the state. So this is where you'll come, and this is live, and we don't have any challenges yet since the process has not started. So we don't have a layer to show you right now, but you'll be able to kind of filter that, and it'll be clearly marked. So you can play around with it in the meantime, but once the challenge process goes live about a week from then, we'll start to have some challenges represented on there. And as far as the speed test goes, you navigate to that from the same homepage. It says test your internet. It asks a series of questions based on the very narrowly defined process required by the NTIA in the speed test challenge process. There's also an opportunity before we get into the speed test, if you do not have internet service at your address, then, or at a user's address, then you can check a box to indicate that. as far as the challenge process or the speed test process goes, you'll go through the survey. It'll ask for name, tier of service that you're subscribing to, and a few other questions. You'll run a test and it will give you your results on this page and kind of give you an indication of how it stacks up. This would be a result that would indicate being underserved below that 120 threshold. We do maintain a record of all of these tests on the back end, but would still recommend either if you're doing it yourself or advising others to do so, take a screenshot just so you have that record. It has the details that are required, including the address and the IP address, so that it will meet some of the NTIA requirements. And but we do maintain a record on the back end and can provide exports to support the challenge process as well. So it's not just reliant on the screenshots. And then as Brandon mentioned earlier, they do require 3 speed tests on 3 different days. It can be hard to remember to go back and do things. So so once you've finished your test, if you want to get reminders, you can add in your email address, and then reminders will be sent out just to kind of ping you and say, you've taken 1 test. In order for this to qualify for the challenge process, you need to take 2 more. If possible, take 1 now, and you'll get that a few times until hopefully you get up to 3 speed test challenges. And we won't use that information for anything other than the purposes of this challenge process. So I think that's ultimately where things, how our contribution to this process works. If there are any questions, happy to get into that later. But yeah.
We'll go ahead and open it up for questions from folks. And for people that are online, feel free to either write it in the chat or raise a hand. I see Tyler Biku is first in line there. So Tyler, go ahead and ask your question. Other folks, feel free to write it in or come off mute and ask away.
Hey everyone, I had a question for Dustin about the Connecting Virginia speed test map. Maybe a question and a suggestion at the end, if that's okay. So, do you know what data on the back end is being used to show point service status? Because I pulled in the unserved and underserved data from the open data portal to the version 2 of the Fabric, and it looks a little bit different. So I didn't know if you guys wanted, consistency between that, or we're using a different metric.
I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know exactly. Maybe Chandler, you can answer exactly what's in the open data portal, and if that's exactly what we have, or if that's kind of a pre-modification, pre-deduplication data set.
Tyler, apologies. I was trying to answer another question in the chat while you were asking yours, but the data sets in the open data portal, and now, like Lonnie mentioned in the chat, the community anchor institutions got live during this meeting.
Nice.
Are the 162,000 locations that factors in where existing funding is. So we took the 443,000 locations that were unserved solely based on the FCC's numbers out of the December 31st, 2022 map. We removed any location that had been funded through body, through state general funds or American Rescue Plan dollars. We removed any CAF2, RDOF, or any USDA funding from that 443,000. That's how we got to 162,000. Eligible BEAD eligible locations as a starting point for this BEAD challenge process. And that 162,000 is the sum of the unserved BEAD eligible shape file in the open data portal and the underserved file in the open data portal.
Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying that. It's just in this connecting Virginia map, I'm seeing some blue dots that are underserved and some right next to some gray dots that are served. And they both say they have 1,000 over 35 service in the same neighborhood. So I was just wondering what the data that was driving that I guess distinction.
Sure. Send us that example on a screenshot, and then that goes for anybody on this call, and we'll get on it.
Okay, and then I guess my suggestion, I didn't want to drop it, was maybe at the end of the survey when you're talking about 7 days of speed test, that's a little intimidating, and I know 3 is the requirement. So is there any way we can get maybe more clear messaging to say, hey, you only need to do this 3 times, and this is kind of mandated by the NTIA? I don't know, because I personally wouldn't do it 7 times in a row.
Yeah, I can take that suggestion and respond real quick. Yes, we can. Thank you for that suggestion, and certainly noted, and will draft some more direct language for meeting the minimum requirement and not making it seem so intimidating. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate the hard work you guys are doing.
Yeah, Tyler, and just to reiterate that, the current language there is that getting to 3 speed tests as required by the NTIA model challenge process is already going to be challenging enough. I think our original thought process there was that if we had 7 days listed, we might get 3 out of that. But glad to clarify and make sure that it's clear that we need 3 examples for this process. Dustin, if you're still on, do you mind coming back on and explaining how folks can download the results of those speed tests and then use them for the challenge portal on Virginia Tech side?
Yeah, happy to talk through that process. In terms of there's a few ways that we can go about it. Of course, there's considerations for the data privacy of those participating in the challenge process and those submitting speed tests, right? And so with the eligible challengers limited to those entities that were described earlier, reach out to body if you're able to support this, and we'll work on exporting the data, the minimum data set that is needed to meet the NTIA requirements, make sure that we're protecting the data privacy of those submitting their survey results, and we'll get those out to eligible challengers. And so I'd say reach out, and we'll have a direct set of instructions for how we can make those exports available to permissible challengers.
And that's a great point. As you guys have noted throughout the presentation, residents are not an eligible challenger to the BEAD eligibility maps. So local governments, will be responsible for reaching out to us. If we get a dense collection of speed tests from any locality across the Commonwealth, we'll reach out to the local government to make sure they're aware of that. But that challenge can't be submitted by the person that takes the speed test. It has to come in through a local government or a nonprofit or a broadband provider that might be interested in submitting on behalf of a resident. That service is not available because of insufficient speeds. I want to make that clear that these have to be routed through something else, and that ready.net map, download that data and share it for it to be submitted on behalf of that resident, preferably through that local government that is in the jurisdiction. So the next question I think came in was from Joe Prater in the chat. Are there any anticipated changes to the BEAD eligible locations currently posted on the Virginia Open Data Portal between now and the launch of the challenge process? No, that's our final list of 162,000 locations starting point. That will be the list that we use moving forward as the starting point for the challenge process. I think I saw a hand raised in the participant box. Feel free to unmute yourself if you've raised a hand and go ahead and ask the question. Tamara.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes. So Chandler, how can someone challenge an address that's claimed to be served by a provider? Can you all just give a example of how, because we've got a list of unserved and underserved on the open data portal. And so what if someone lives in a community and they go to the ready.net? Now, this is an individual that's trying to work with their county. They go and it says that they're served by a particular provider. However, this person is a line extension need. How would that person provide that information to their locality? Because you all
dialogue with the
localities are most often going to be crowdsourcing data from their residents. So how would someone that's claimed to be served on the map help their address actually be converted?
The ready.net tool displays unserved, underserved, but also served addresses. So residents of a locality will have the ability to click on their location to conduct a speed test, regardless if this initial run through done by our office says they're an unserved address or an underserved address. So that's how they would be able to go in and conduct that speed test. A line extension concern is a different beast. The resident should be in dialogue with a local government or a nonprofit to let them know that, hey, I in fact don't have broadband access because it would cost thousands to extend infrastructure to my. They would still have the ability to submit a challenge under their point on the ready.net tool because, like we said earlier, the served address points are also displayed on that map.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm from the city of Suffolk, and we have a lot of rural RDOF and VADI grants that are in progress to be completed. But on the map, did you say you took out any that were VADI RDOF from it, or are they listed as served, or is it not until they're actually installed? Because I do have some dots on here that says unserved, but my VADI and RDOF, they're in progress.
Charles, good question. So our files in the Open Data Portal have removed those VADI, RDOF, CAF2, USDA areas from eligibility because they either have been built out or they are still in that enforceable commitment for service. And the BEAD model challenge process says that BEAD dollars can't be used in areas that already have an existing commitment, federal or state funding. So the lists on the Open Data Portal reflect that final list of 162,000 unserved and underserved that don't have broadband access and are not in a funded project area.
Right. So I guess my real question is on the map on the connecting Virginia, they're shown as unserved. They're listed, but they're still shown as unserved, even though they're in the process of going through the VADI RDOF build out. So maybe it's just a correction of information, maybe.
Yeah, let us go back and check that to make sure that those locations are not listed on that Connecting Virginia map, and we'll get back to you and update folks when that change is made if it's listed incorrectly now.
Thank you.
Questions from folks online? Anybody on the phone? Tamara, I'll turn it back over to you then for any closing remarks and next steps.
Sure. So again, thank you all for joining us this morning for our BEAD Challenge webinar. We will be having follow-up conversations. Again, as everyone on the call said this morning, if you have questions, please make sure you all email us. I think our contact information is probably on the last slide. And so please reach out to us directly. Both Virginia Tech and Ready.net are our partners in this. And so any questions that you all would eventually maybe have for them, please still submit them to DHCD and we will disperse them to the appropriate partner and make sure we get a response to you all. And the last thing I would like to say is today is Lonnie Hamilton's birthday. And so I'd like to wish Lonnie a happy birthday. I will say, unlike his boss, I typically take off my birthday. And so Lonnie's working today on his birthday. So happy birthday, Lonnie.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very sweet.
And so I will go ahead and officially close today's webinar. Again, please reach out if you all have questions. We all know that this is an entirely new process. And we thank you all for your partnerships. And we will be providing technical assistance if you all have questions as you all are trying to navigate this process. And again, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.